the fire within. She lies there on the sofa waiting, the fire burning slowly and giving her the warmth she much needed. Though her mind drifted to other thoughts, besides the fire burning, her thoughts turned to him. Music played softly in the background, a selection of just about anything and everything, from classical to blues to rock. Her mind floated away. The doorbell rang. Not trying to be too excited, she rose from the sofa and answered the door calmly. He entered with a smile and a very welcomed kiss for her. She returned the embrace and the kiss, both holding on to each other a bit longer than normal. It had been a long time since they had seen each other, and they weren't going to waste any time. Conversation was minimal between the two of them. They weren't strangers to each other. They had shared many conversations, phone, text, and email. Besides the normal niceties, this was a long overdue visit. She led him to the sofa where she quickly removed his coat so her hands could roam his body. Feeling his body under his shirt, she couldn't resist the urgency to get naked with him. Making himself comfortable on the sofa, she straddled him, placing her legs around him, and she began kissing him longingly, not hesitating to showing her desire for him. Pulling on his shirt, she removed it from his body so her hands could feel his skin. He pulled her closer to him, kissing her with the passion that only lovers do. They couldn't get any closer to each other, acting like two addicts that were just addicted to the only drug they knew, each other. He grabbed her shirt, pulling it up over her head, exposing her breasts, being restrained by her bra. Reaching behind her, he undid her bra and removed it from her. Letting his hands grasping at her breast, he held her and leaned her back so he could suck on her already hard nipples. Smelling her smooth skin, she let her head float back and closed her eyes softly to take in the full sensation of his hands on her body. Running her hands through his hair as she let out a sigh of approval as he fondled and sucked on her breast, she became aroused at his touch. She could feel his cock becoming hard in his pants as it pressed against her crotch, and she couldn't wait to get a hold of his member. The burning sensation of desire was beginning to well up inside her like a volcano ready to blow. Returning his lips to hers, he kissed her with a gentleness like a butterfly kisses a flower, with only the tip of his lip and tongue touching her lips. This caused such a sensation on her lips and shrilled ran up her spine that you only experience with certain people. Feeling herself getting more aroused not only with his hands on her, but with the erection in his pants and his lips on her, she couldn't take much more. Unwrapping herself from his body and standing, she unzipped her pants, pulling them down, exposing a black and pink polka-dotted thong. He wasted no time either, removing his shoes and his pants, allowing his throbbing cock to be released from the restraint of his clothing. Replacing her body back on top of his, but this time her pussy was wet, and she could feel his hard cock pressed against her lips. She grinded her pelvis into him, letting him know he was ready for him. He had other plans, though, wanting to taste her wetness and devour her. He wanted his tongue deep within her pussy. "Let's lie on the floor," he said to her, pushing the coffee table back and throwing a blanket on the floor in front of the fire. The fire was not the only item burning hot by now, but it was also burning hot in the two of them. Lying on the floor, they resumed their sharing of passion as if there was no interruption at all. Their hands drifted over each other, touching and caressing, exploring every inch into memory, trying to burn it there forever. Moving his lips down her body to her sweetness between her legs, he began to lick her, but he wanted her to return the favor. 69 was his favorite sexual position, and she knew this all too well. He put his cock in clear access of her, and she wasted no time to put his thick cock in her mouth. Feeling her warm mouth wrapped around his cock excited him. The way her tongue licked and twirled around his head, he just couldn't get enough of her mouth as she sucked and licked at his cock. Licking her pussy and slowly pushing his finger deep within her wetness, his tongue licked at her clit and roaming the inner parts of her. He enjoyed giving her this pleasure as he has before, and the way she would come, and he continued to probe her wetness with his tongue and his finger. She would stop sucking on his cock so she could stroke it and lick his balls, arousing him even more. Then licking the shaft and running her tongue around his head with so much deliberate action as to memorize it against her lips. Not knowing how much longer he could take the feeling of her tongue and mouth on his cock, but he didn't want to stop until she had reached an orgasm, which he knew wasn't much longer. Her breathing became rapid and deeper. Pulling his cock from her mouth and stroking it with her hand, she exclaimed, "I'm coming, Jay. You're making me come." He didn't stop doing what he was doing. He continued to probe, lick, and tongue her until he knew she was finished. Her pussy was so wet from cum, he just wanted to lick it all. Stopping and turning himself around so he could lie on top of her, pressing his body into hers, pushing the hair away from her face, he kissed her, pressing his lips against her and letting his tongue explore the outer part of her lips, and she did the same to him. The softness of his mustache against her lips she found exhilarating, only raising the sexual desire for him deep within her. Eating each other up like their last meal before being sentenced to death. It didn't take long, and she could feel his cock pressing against her wet pussy lips, wanting to be inside her, and she reached down, guiding his hard member into her. Feeling his hard cock pushing his way through, she let out a heavy breath of pure satisfaction of the feeling she had long missed of having his cock inside her. Taking his time and patience, he too wanted to feel every inch of his cock slowly entering her wet cavern, penetrating the depths of her essence and warmth. He was in no hurry. This was going to last some time. Wrapping his legs around his lips and pulling him into her, his full cock was enveloped within her deepest warm pussy. He moved his hips slowly at first as she let out sounds of complete ecstasy of the sheer pleasure she was having. Her breathing was so deep and rapid, and he began to thrust his cock deep within her. He could tell her pussy was tightening around his cock with each entry, and knew she was getting ready to climax again. With such a release of sexual tension, she came with such force that he could feel it throughout her body, and she grabbed at him, and her legs tightened up around him. "Oh my God, I'm coming. I can't stop coming," she hollered. "Keep coming, baby. I want to feel you come all over my cock," he replied softly in her ear. He couldn't help himself feeling the complete pleasure he was giving her. Knowing this just made his cock that much harder, and he could tell he was not far from coming himself. He thrust his cock deep inside her. His breathing was also rapid at this amount of delight in feeling her warm, wet pussy wrapped tightly around his cock. He came with such force, driving his cock deeper within her, and she exclaimed, "Fuck, I'm coming again!" And he released his full amount into her with one final thrust of his cock. He was gripping her body beneath him, pulling it into him so to get every bit of his cock into the deep recesses of her pussy, giving the last bit of his essence. He let out such a sound of pure release of gratifying pleasure. Both of them held onto each other tightly, not wanting to let go, kissing one another deeply from pure desire of passion and lust, which they cannot get from another person. They can only find this gratification from each other. Returning the kisses to a gentle touch of their lips as they lingered and held on. There was no need to rush or hurry. Fulfillment has been met, and each time they were together it was only to get better and more exciting. The willingness to please each other was shown in their kisses, the way they held each other and looked into each other's eyes. Passion showed through to not just be lust or desire, but something deeper that neither of them wanted to admit verbally, but through physical actions. In other words, please be true. In other words, I love you. Fly me to the moon.